All right, letting everyone in.
All right. Looks like we've got one person that's still connecting the audio.
Dr. Thompson, I'm here.
All right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start off with the discussion and review of the fiscal year 2020 2021 budget. A reminder, this is our first of two budget hearings. The second one is scheduled for 1 week from today, Monday, September 21st at 5:15 p.m. Mr. Williams, do you want to go over the budget?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you for the microphone check. Mr. Chairman, as it relates to the fiscal year 2021 budget for the Lakeshore Hospital Authority, I think it goes to say without question, this has been somewhat of a unique year. In all of my history with public budgets, public service, it's probably been the most difficult year in terms of distractions that we've had to deal with. But nonetheless, the requirement to adopt a budget is still on the books. It is something that all public entities must do. We are, just for the public's benefit, on a state fiscal year. Our budget begins October 1st and ends September 30th. The method for adopting the budget is prescribed by law. It's not really something that we get to do and pick and choose as we like. The things that we must do are told or enacted through legislation, and that's the way that, or that's the format that we follow. Now, having said that, number one, the budget was unique because of COVID and the implications from COVID. And as a result of that, the authority members levied a maximum millage of 1/10,000th of 1 mil, 0.0001. And if you look on page 3 of the budget, you will see where that is expected to generate $300 countywide. Now, the reason that's significant is not just so much for the fact that as a taxing authority, we did not levy a millage of any size, but also it's important because most of the legal requirement for budget adoption is based on the millage portion of the budget. That's not to say that all expenses and all revenues within the budget aren't important, but there is nothing that receives the attention as much as ad valorem taxation in the process. And so because of that, some of the steps that we normally would have to take through the 2 budget hearings, we're not going to be required to do. So if it looks a little different than some of the formats in the past, again, we're simply following the state's requirements, but that's the reason why. When you take the millage component out of the budget, it changes things a little bit, particularly in the advertising. Now, Having said that, Mr. Chairman, there are several things that I would like to point out about the proposed budget of the authority. Number one, you'll notice the format has changed a little bit. This was a request that was made last year. We're trying to integrate in and put some aging and historical numbers where you can actually look over a period of time and see what various expenses and revenues have been. So in there, you have 2 full years, the year ending September 30th of 18 and the year ending September 30th of 19. And then we have 10 months worth of expenses, which from the current fiscal year. We also changed the format a little bit. We changed the budget format to but to match the QuickBooks format that we actually use for our monthly financials. And so it should be easier in the future to follow the budget in comparison to the actual accounts payable, accounts receivable schedules that we use through QuickBooks. I think it's very significant for the authority to understand that we did not take into consideration anything related to hospital operations, nothing clinical. We simply did not have any information or was not in possession of information in time to do that. What will happen is as those things are identified and as the trustees approve them in the future, we will submit budget amendments and they can be folded into the budget as needed. But if someone is looking at this budget and they're asking for a specific line item related to something related to hospital closure or our future plans, simply not going to be there. We did not include any wage or benefit increases in this budget. There's actually no increases taken other than those that might have been required by law. One example of that, of course, would be the Florida retirement system had an increase for the regular employee group, which would include both Cynthia and Sonia of the authority. Those rates increased from 7.4% to 10%. Mine is a specialized rate, it's a UA group, and it did have an increase, but it was much smaller. It's 5 point something total. There was some increases. However, they were the legal ones, nothing that we ourselves took. There are no changes in the laws as it relates to the adoption of the budget. So as in years past, we've tried to provide a script to make sure that we do all the things that are required of us by law. And so that's also part of your agenda packet. We have tried to simply maintain for budget purposes what was allocated for the current year. Obviously, as I stated earlier, the budget is now looking a little bit different because we're trying to match line items within our actual accounting software. So it may look a little different, but we are not trying to take and propose increases in anything within the budget. I would like to point out to you that if you, of course, look at this, do a very quick calculation, at the end of this fiscal year, and this does include the lease payout from CHS to the authority. The authority will have approximately, or we're estimating it will have approximately 28 million in cash reserves. And so that's a question that's always asked. You'll have about 28 million in cash reserves. Because we're not receiving ad valorem revenue, our expenses are going to be paid out of those reserves, but the number that I just gave you is a net number. That is net of the proposed operating expenses. Once we add future expenses in, as we know more about what options and what we may do or not do at the current facility, those reserves will of course be lowered. But going into your new fiscal year, those are the balances that we can expect. And having said that, I'll answer any questions that you or any trustee may have, Mr. Chairman.
Before I open the public hearing, is there any questions or comments from the trustees? Hearing none, I will declare the public hearing open. Again, this is a time for comments referring to the budget. Declare the public hearing open. If there's any questions.
Mr. Chair, you need to announce the proposed millage rate, please, sir.
I'm sorry, the proposed millage rate for the 2020-2021 budget is 0.0001.
Do you need a motion to pass that, or do you go to public comments now?
We're in the public hearing now, and then when we close the public hearing, I still don't think we'll have a motion this time. Dale, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but after next week's public hearing, we'll adopt the budget.
Okay.
And if you're called in, if you'll press *6.
This is Dr. Thompson. Can I ask Dale a question real quick?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, did you, in that budget, is that where we're going to place the $150,000 a month to keep the building breathing until we figure out what's going on?
Yes, sir. What we will do is as soon as we have those expenses better tracked and we have a better understanding of exactly what they will be, we will prepare the appropriate budget amendment and submit it to the trustees for adoption. And at that point, it will amend the budget and place those funds in it.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any comments from the public?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Hearing none, I will declare the public hearing closed. A reminder, our second public hearing is set for 1 week from today, Monday, September 21st at 5:15 p.m. And we will move on to the rest of the regular meeting. Is there any staff or trustee or additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, we actually need to adopt the tentative millage rate now and the tentative budgets, please, sir.
I'm sorry. I will entertain a motion. I was wrong, Dr. Thompson. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the tentative millage rate and budget as laid out.
And
So I would like to, I'm sorry.
those budgets do need to be read into the record prior to the motion.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Dale?
Budget amounts.
Yeah, the actual budget amounts for the various funds need to be read into the motion.
So it's a 1/1000th%?
We need to state the amounts in each of the budgets as part of the motion. Is that correct?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, your first motion would be to adopt the tentative millage rate of 1/10,000th of a mil for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. That would be the first motion.
I'd like to submit a motion that we adopt the millage rate of 1/10,000th of a mil for the 2020-21 budget year.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Thompson. A second. Was that you, Ms. Lori?
Yes, it was.
A motion and a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed? That motion carries.
And of course, next, Mr. Chairman, would be to adopt a motion to adopt the tentative budgets for the 2020-2021 fiscal year as follows. The Patient Care Fund, Hospital Services, the appropriations and reserves are proposed at $9,020,800. The Patient Care Fund for Clinical Services, appropriation and reserves is proposed at $1,210,000. The operating fund is proposed for appropriations and reserves at $17,125,000. The capital improvement fund is proposed with appropriations and reserves of $1,067,965 for a total appropriations and reserves for fiscal year 2021 of $28,423,765.
Instead of repeating that, can I just make a motion that we approve the stated revenues and reserves that our chairman, Mr. Williams just spoke about? Or do
I see no reason you can't do that, Mr. Thompson.
I make that motion?
I'll second it.
A motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Ms. Chancey. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Williams. So we will move on to the rest of the regular meeting. Is there any staff or trustee additions or deletions?
Staff has no changes, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Ms. Chancey, a second by Dr. Thompson. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Public comments. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Ms. Chancey, a second by Dr. Thompson. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Got no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to the new business. Mr. Williams, the property and workers' comp insurance renewal.
Yeah, again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The authority's coverage is placed through the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust. The trust, of course, is administered by the Florida League of Cities, and it specializes in governmental insurances. Therefore, it markets governmental agencies. The renewal premium on the property side is $7,835. That's an 11% increase over the current year, which is $7,038. The workers' comp portion of the premium is $712. That's a 2% increase over the current premium of $698. We did not have any claims as an authority. What has happened is the base rate and we didn't have increase in property values either. So what's happened is the base rate is increased, and that's the reason you have an overall premium increase. But we do believe, because it is specialized and geared to the needs of governmental entities, it is a fair and reasonable renewal, and we would ask for approval of the renewal rate, Mr. Chairman.
This is Dr. Thompson. I'd like to submit a motion that we approve the renewal rate as stated by Mr. Williams.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson,
Second.
a second by Ms. Chancey. Is there any further questions? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. The mowing service bid award, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, again, thank you. We did accept bids for a renewal on the mowing services contract. We received 3 responsive bids. There's a tabulation sheet of those bidders in your agenda packet. We are recommending that we award the bid to Law Enforcement Agency with a base bid of $5,040.70 annually. Law Enforcement Agency is the current contractor. They have had this contract for 5 years, but it is terming out this year, which is why there was a rebid. And it's actually a little bit lower on the base side than it was when it was originally bid. The way this contract works is it takes mutual agreement by both parties, but it can be, after the initial year, it can be renewed to up to 4 one-year consecutive terms. And so there's plenty of opportunity here if the trustees so desire to make changes. It's not a 5-year all or nothing type contract. You get to evaluate it each year, just as you have in the past. And law enforcement has been responsible, and they are the lowest responsible bidder. Therefore, we recommend they be awarded the new contract.
Williams, do you feel confident and comfortable that the issues that we were having, say a few months, probably 6 months ago, have been resolved?
After having met with them and after having discussed with them, to the best of my knowledge, those problems have not presented themselves again. And of course, at that moment, we also just basically withhold payment. If the work is not satisfactory, we just withhold payment until it meets our satisfaction.
Okay.
So I would say there's been no issues, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to accept the bid award.
I make a motion that we accept the bid award for Law Enforcement Agency as stated by Mr. Williams.
Second.
Got a second motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Vice Chair seat.
Mr. Chairman, as you are all aware, our vice chair has left the board due to his having been elected to the office of clerk of court. And we do need to have someone serve in the capacity of vice chair. Has a number of roles and functions based on the statutory requirement and the bylaws. Needless to say, in the absence of the chair, the vice chair would, of course, sit in their place, and they have the ability to sign and do things in behalf of the chair should the chair not be available. And so this time we would ask that we select a new vice chair from amongst yourself.
Do we have any volunteers?
This is Dr. Thompson. I would submit my name.
Very well.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, Mr. Chairman, obviously trustee Chauncey is already in an office. So it really only left 2 options.
I'm glad to see that we have a volunteer. Since Dr. Thompson has, go ahead, Ms. Lori.
We still have to vote on it.
We do. Since Dr. Thompson has so kindly volunteered his service, can I get that in the form of a motion by somebody that we nominate Dr. Thompson as the vice chair?
I so move.
Second.
Got a motion by Ms. Lori, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you again, Dr. Thompson. I certainly appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Moving down to the next item of business, the approval of proclamations. Mr. Williams?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in accordance with our last resolution, which declared a state of emergency for the authority, which was number 2020-004. We have granted weekly extensions, or you have granted weekly extensions under the authority of that resolution. At this time, we need the trustees to acknowledge receipt or to acknowledge your actions of extensions for the period August 13th, 2020 through September 16th, 2020.
And make, go ahead, Lori.
I'm going to make it easy. So move.
Second.
Got a motion by Ms. Chancey, a second by Dr. Thompson. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 That motion carries. The approval of resolution 2020-010, Mr. Williams?
Yes, and then of course, this is becoming somewhat cyclable, but the governor or the gubernatorial orders change. Therefore, the state changes their emergency order. So what we're doing here is we're amending our state of emergency to simply incorporate the changes that have been enacted by the state into their state of emergency. So having said that, we would ask the authority to adopt resolution 2020-010.
So move.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Douglas, a second by Dr. Thompson. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. The staff report is included in your agenda packet. I encourage you to look over that to see what has been going on in the office. Board member comments, Ms. Chancey.
I think we need a special meeting to look in to the licensure problem. And because all the vetting that we've asked Mr. Williams to do is null and void unless we do something about the hospital license. That's my comment.
Correct. Mr. Williams, that the attorney that we approved at the last meeting, that you stated that attorney would be, that law firm would be helpful in helping us understand what the process is for
Yes,
the licensing.
what we expect from them, Mr. Chairman, is for them, through their knowledge and abilities, to be able to provide information to the trustees as to what will be required in order to obtain an ACA license, as well as a Medicare, Medicaid provider license, regardless of what options and circumstances exist. So for example, if they find that there is a way to do this and we get some special benefit because of COVID, or we get some special benefit because of circumstances, we want them to identify that, where when they do come and they present or they do provide information, you will be able to rely on what they are telling you. You know, anybody can read the book and say it takes a standard X amount of time to get these documents. But what we're looking for is what can they actually be obtained in what time frame. And we do not have that. That is something that we are seeking assistance to do. And obviously I'll let you know the minute we receive anything regarding that.
Okay. Dr. Thompson, you have any comments?
Comments? I think just to give you an example, I received a phone call today from an acquaintance who's a business person in North Carolina stating he read in our paper, local paper. And he started to, read out to me some facts about what was going on with the hospital, none of which was true. So I just would say there's a lot of misinformation being circled out there. I don't know if, of course, this meeting is public and this meeting is available, right? What happens at these meetings is available online. So I would just encourage people, if they want to get factual data as to what's happening, look at the minutes of our meeting, to see what was passed and said, because it's not always accurate going through the newspaper. So that's what I would say.
Fair enough. Mr. Douglas?
No comment at this time.
All right. I just want to say again, thank you, Dr. Thompson, for stepping up and volunteering to take on the vice chair role. Certainly appreciated. Mr. Williams, do you have anything else before we sign off?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to reiterate that the second and final public hearing for the 2020-21 budget of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority is going to be September 21st, 2020 at 5:15 p.m. It will be a CMT, Communications Media Technology hearing, 1 week from today.
Yes, sir.
Motion to
And with
adjourn.
that, I will accept that motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'm going to second it.
We got a second. Thank
Good
you
job,
all.
Miss Lori.
All in favor, aye.
Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.